Genocide. My name is Lorig Charkoudian. I am a state delegate from the Maryland General Assembly, and it is my honor to be here on behalf of the Armenian Assembly of America and the Armenian National Committee of America to be your MC and hostess tonight. So thank you for having me. Thank you for being here, and we are going to begin with an invocation from Father Sarkis Aftamukian from Surplach Armenian Church in Bethesda.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for enabling us to gather here to invoke the 109th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide carried out by the Ottoman Turks and to render respectful tribute to our 1.5 million martyrs who became the victims of cruel massacres, all kinds of abuses, and later deportations from their 5,000 years old homeland. For the last 109 years, we have always looked forward positively, expecting that the executioners would follow the perpetrators of the Holocaust and eventually retribute for what horrible deeds they have done. We ask you, O Lord, to look with your mercy upon the Republic of Armenia and Artsakh, whose sovereign territory has been breached by those who would see the entire Armenian nation and its people erased from the face of the earth. At this momentous turning point in the continued survival of this tiny landlocked nation, we pray for justice and your protection and guidance and for your abundant grace, so that the Republic of Armenia and Artsakh will continue to stand side by side with the other free, democratic, and progressive nations of the world. We also pray for the dignified and safe return of the people of Artsakh to their homes of millennia, and for the Artsakh officials and prisoners of war illegally captured and imprisoned by Azerbaijan to be reunited with their families. On behalf of His Eminence, Archbishop Anushagam, Prelate of the Eastern Prelacy of the United States of America, we express our heartfelt gratitude to all those brave public servants of our country who fight against the burial of the truth, unlike those who try to please the neighboring dictators of Armenia, those who adamantly plan to annihilate the people of Mount Ararat. We believe that by carrying the legacy of our 1.5 million martyrs, we are pursuing the noble cause of all those who are suffering all over the world and seeking justice and peace. May the Almighty Lord empower us in our endurance until the day when, as the psalmist says, righteousness and peace will kiss each other, faithfulness will spring up from the ground, and righteousness will look down from the sky. Amen.
So it's my honor to welcome you here tonight. As I said, for those of you who have been here, you know, and that we'll be hearing from several members of Congress, and we're honored to have them here today. We also have other special guests we'll be hearing from tonight. I want to begin, though, with a few words of personal words of welcome. And like many of you, I am the granddaughter of survivors of the Armenian Genocide, and so I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, hearing stories about their survival of my grandparents and hearing stories about our many family members who perished. And it was very clear to me as I was coming up that I was called on, as the third generation in this country, I was called on to work for justice for the Armenian cause, to work for justice for the world, to work for an end to genocide, and that was part of what I was to do with my life. And it is part of what I have done with my life, and many of you here have dedicated your entire lives to that, and I am grateful to you for that. But it was particularly devastating for me. I was actually home visiting my mother in Newton, in the home that I grew up in the home that I sat and made lemejun and taina huts with my grandmother who was a survivor. In the same kitchen where I learned about her survival, where I learned about her devastation, where I learned about her trauma, where I saw her work through her own trauma to carry on love for me and for us. And I was sitting in that same kitchen and looking at images of people fleeing Artsakh last fall. And it absolutely devastated me. And I asked myself, how could we possibly be here again? And I know all of you were in your communities, in your churches, in your kitchens, with your family members, asking this same question. And so now we are gathered here today asking that question. And while we commemorate the Armenian Genocide, while we call for justice for the Armenian Genocide, we now also call for a rededication of justice for Artsakh. And it's my honor to be here with people who have been working on this, and to our friends in Congress who continue to call for accountability, accountability for Turkey, accountability for Azerbaijan. And it's my honor to be here to welcome them and to honor them. And so I'm going to begin with our first senator, Senator Ed Markey. As most of you know, Senator Markey has been a long-time champion for us. He recently led a strong letter urging the release of the Armenian POWs and ensuring the right of return under international protection for Artsakh Armenians as a precondition to peace. He has been a friend of the Armenian community in Massachusetts for over 40 years, and we are honored to welcome him here today. Senator Markey.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. So great to be with you this evening, to have the opportunity to bear witness with all of you to the horrific attack against Nagorno-Karabakh and resulting humanitarian crisis. As we all know, Azerbaijan launched a large-scale attack against Nagorno-Karabakh on September 19th, 2023, causing a mass exodus of more than 100,000 ethnic Armenians from the region for fear of further persecution and ethnic cleansing. Unsurprisingly, the Azerbaijani government's hollow promise of a ceasefire and safe return to the area have failed to materialize. Instead, what we are seeing is that Azerbaijan has unlawfully detained prisoners of war, refused to pull back its forces from Armenia's territory, and threatened new attacks and making escalating demands on the Armenian people. To Azerbaijan, I say no to changing Armenia's constitution. I say no to surrendering sovereign Armenian land. I say no to the ethnic cleansing of the historic Armenian land of Nagorno-Karabakh. And that's why I was proud to introduce the bipartisan Senate resolution last month, which would require the Biden administration to provide a report on Azerbaijani human rights practices, including extremely concerning reports of human rights violations, such as unlawful killings, torture, restrictions on freedom of movement, the erasure of Armenians' cultural heritage, and ethnic cleansing. And I have called on the United States for decades to formally recognize the atrocities committed against the Armenians during World War I as genocide. And on April 24th, 2021, after years of advocacy and letters to multiple administrations, President Biden rightfully prioritized human rights and justice by recognizing the genocide that resulted in the death of 1.5 million Armenians. The Azerbaijani government's reprehensible actions go back years, and it's long overdue to hold Azerbaijan accountable for its conduct towards Armenia. It is also well past time to make clear to the Azerbaijani government that it must cease all hostilities and return to peace. I will continue to work to bolster the will, the rights, the freedoms of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, including their rights to return to their homeland, and to ensure that Armenia has the support it needs to protect itself now and in the future. And I continue to look forward to working with all of you in this room, because we must refuse Azerbaijan's violation of Armenia's sovereignty. We must refuse Azerbaijan's demands that Armenia surrender its land, and we must refuse to stay silent on Azerbaijan's ethnic cleansing. And that is who we have to be, because that's the only way in which we are going to win this struggle. Thank you all so much for everything.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Before we call up Senator Bob Menendez, I just want to acknowledge two Congress members who are in the room. Janice Solikowski is here. Hello. Congressman Tom Swazi is here as well. And now I'd like to welcome to the podium Senator Bob Menendez, who has been the Armenian cause in Congress for over 3 decades, and he continues to press the administration on all levels on the safety and security of Armenia and Artsakh.
Thank you very much, Reverend Clergy, distinguished guests. My special thanks to the Armenian National Committee of America for organizing the event and the Armenian Assembly, which is co-hosting. For years, I led the effort of the United States Senate to have the Senate finally recognize the Armenian Genocide. I had to go to the Senate floor not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times before we finally broke through the Turkish logjam and we passed the Armenian Genocide. The first time the President of the United States to be the first president to do what is right by our country and by history, which is why I went to see President Biden. And I said, we passed the Armenian Genocide in the Senate. What you can do is create the appropriate time and history for the United States people to recognize the truthfulness of this historical fact. And today's observance on the 109th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide comes 3 years after the President of the United States finally spoke truth to what happened to the Armenian people. When President Biden called it genocide, that was thanks to the dedication and commitment of everyone here, for our marches in Times Square, to the phone banks to Armenian church and civic groups, to the Armenian Assembly's conferences and seminars, to the millions of messages that Anka sent. You never gave up. And it is a lesson in citizen participation that you can change the course of events. And together, we change the course of events. What we remember nearly 109 years ago, in the waning years of the Ottoman Empire, Turkish authorities began a systematic campaign to exterminate the Armenian population through killing, starvation, forced deportation, and untold brutality. We remember the 1.5 million victims not only for the way in which they died, more importantly, we reflect on the way in which they lived. Their contributions to Armenian history and culture live on today, including so many who have escaped the violence to make a new life here in the United States. Indeed, as a refugee, a family of refugees from Cuba, and have seen what that community has done here, I marvel at what the Armenian community has done here in the United States, in its churches, in its schools, in its professions, in its businesses. And so that's part of the American history. But I'll close on simply saying that unfortunately, he who does not remember the past is destined to relive it. And what we saw with Azerbaijan's ethnic cleansing of Artsakh is deplorable. And I regret that our government was not more forceful. I was pushing them to be far more forceful. And now it is time for us once and for all to insist that the administration no longer use its waiver to provide arms to the Azerbaijani government, which should never be in conflict with the Azerbaijan. to Samantha Powers, the Administrator of USID, at a hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee last week. What you have committed to the 120,000 Armenians who have been displaced is a paltry sum. We must do more. If we did not stand in the way of Azerbaijan, we must at least help the Armenians that had to flee. So you have my hand in friendship and the power of my
For the years of work of Senator Menendez on behalf of our community. Next, I'd like to welcome the Honorable Frank Pallone, who is the co-chair and founding member of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues. Kind of complete.
Thank you so much, and I see that my other co-chair, Gus Baucus, is here. I think you're next. But I just wanted to say briefly, if I can. First of all, let me thank all the members of the Armenian Caucus and all of you from the Armenian National Committee, from the Armenian Assembly, and other Armenian organizations, diaspora, for all that you did when we passed the Armenian Genocide Recognition Resolution a few years ago that's been mentioned. That was not an easy task. Particularly, I have to thank Anna Eshoo and Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. Get that posted. We knew that if we got it posted, it would pass, but getting it posted was a very difficult thing because of the opposition over the years from both the State Department as well as the Turkish government. But at the same time, as you noticed today, many of the speakers so far, and I'm sure others, are going to talk about how we have to be worried that the genocide continues. I mean, in my opinion, and all of our opinions, what happened in Artsakh, throwing the people of Artsakh out of their ancestral home where they had been for thousands of years, is a continuation of the genocide. And in my opinion, the efforts by Azerbaijan to push further into Armenian territory, the Armenian Republic, and to exercise military force against Armenia is another form of genocide. And so the bottom line is that we in the Armenian Caucus know that the only way that we're going to be able to protect Armenia now is by having a strong Armenia, not only economically, but also militarily. So what we've been doing is basically pushing the State Department, some of these things have been said in the President, to say, first of all, no more, as Senator Menendez, I want to thank Senator Menendez too, he was the sponsor of the resolution in the Senate, no more waivers of Section 907. That's we want the United States government to be supportive of Armenia militarily. They need weapons, they need armaments, they need ways to defend themselves in an effective way against another attack. And as much as we'd like to see a peace agreement, of course we'd like to see a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and a definition of what the territory is of Armenia and Azerbaijan. But that may not happen unless Azerbaijan knows that Armenia is strong and that Armenia can repel an attack, or that Armenia has the allies to repel an attack. And so as much as that agreement is important, it's not as important as it is to make sure that, that Armenia is protected militarily and it has the support of the United States and European Union and others to protect itself. And so those are the priorities. Now, I don't mean to take away from Artsakh. We all believe very strongly that not only there must be a lot more humanitarian assistance for Artsakh, but the way has to be put forward and the United States back it so that the people of Artsakh can go back to their country, go back to Artsakh. Of trying to push all these things, we also all did a letter to the appropriators asking for significantly more money for humanitarian assistance and development assistance for Armenia. I think it was mentioned $250 million is an all-time high. But we're going to continue with all of these things because we know that a strong Armenia is the only way to protect the Armenian people and the only way to guarantee that this republic, which we cherish so much, continues to be strong economically, militarily, and in every other way. So thank you all for being here. This is so important that you're here this evening. Thank you.
we're grateful for so many members of Congress to be able to join us today, and they have so much else going on. They're coming and going, and so Representative Young Kim was here but was not able to stay, so we want to thank her for her support. And now I'd like to welcome up to the podium the Honorable Gus Baucus, co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues and a longtime advocate of issues for the Armenian American community. Congressman Baucus.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I will tell you this, I was the Republican co-sponsor, actually the prime sponsor on the Armenian Genocide resolution, but it could not have been done, at least in the House, without Frank Pallone and Eshoo. Really. Anna, we're going to miss you so very much in so many different ways. She's done such an outstanding job representing you and the Assyrian people as well, Armenia and Assyria. And she's been such a wonderful mentor to me. We love you so much. Our forefathers came over from the homeland and the old country, and they sacrificed so much to be here for us, to make a better life for us, their children and their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. But they never, and we haven't either, we've never forgotten the homeland, the people back in my case, Greece, in your case, Armenia. And that's the way it should be. That's the way we have a duty and a responsibility. And you do it so very well. You do it so very well. And you know what, to tell you, my people can learn a lot from you. Because y'all stick together and you do such a wonderful job. And I know, uh-oh, that's my son calling. I love it. It's actually my wife. I have to answer for that. Anyway, folks, I have a speech, but you know where my heart is. And, you know, we have to continue. Chris Smith had along with Representative McGovern, had a great hearing just the other day on the atrocities committed and continue to be committed by Turkey. The human rights violations. It's inexcusable, folks. And again, we've got to, every administration, we have to work so very hard to convince them to back their allies, their true allies in the region. So we'll never give up, and we'll never stop fighting. So I want to say something in Greek, but I don't know if you'll understand me. But anyway, because we're such a very battle for the Sasagapume. Okay, thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you both for your leadership. Next, we're going to hear from the Honorable Judy Chu, who is one of the few members of Congress who has traveled to Artsakh and seen the beauty and resilience of the Armenians of Artsakh firsthand. She's been a strong advocate for directing humanitarian aid to the Artsakh refugees, and we're honored to have her with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm Congressmember Judy Chu from California's 28th District, and it includes Pasadena, the nation's oldest Armenian American community. Yes. I'm so honored to join with Armenians here in the U.S. Capitol and around the world to commemorate the lives of more than 1.5 million victims of the Armenian Genocide. This genocide at the hands of the Ottoman Empire was carried out through executions, forced marches, starvation, and so many atrocities. And even America's own ambassador at the time, Henry Morgenthau, recorded what he said was the murder of a nation. And there are those who want to erase history and deny reality by claiming this genocide never happened, brushing it aside and whitewashing it. That's why we had to fight for the recognition of this atrocity. And I especially knew we had to fight it because of people like my constituent, Joseph Bibo-Manjikian. When I met him years ago, he was 104 years young. From his wheelchair, he told me about the immense cruelty of the Ottoman Empire and the many family members that he lost. It is because of people like Bibo that for years I co-sponsored the House resolution to recognize the Armenian Genocide. There were so many obstacles, but because of all of you, because of members of Congress, things changed, and I will never forget that day, October 29, 2019, when I went to the floor of the House to cast my vote to put the U.S. on the right side of history, and the genocide resolution passed. Never forget looking up in the gallery and seeing dozens of Armenian Americans with tears in their eyes, thinking that this vote might not have ever happened, but it finally did. We can't be complacent because the threats facing the Armenian people have been emboldened. Since we last held this commemoration in April, Azerbaijan has been ethnically cleansing 120,000 Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, I had the honor of visiting Artsakh myself. I saw such incredible people with a thriving community, and it makes me so heartbroken to think that they have been driven from there, and that there have been so many that have been imprisoned too. So we must do everything that we can, and that's why I continue to work with the Armenia Caucus colleagues here in Congress to hold Azerbaijan accountable for this inexcusable aggression and help Armenia as they absorb these refugees and defend against these persistent threats. So thank you for inviting me here tonight. I am honored to join you to commemorate the victims of the Armenian Genocide. Let us make sure it never happens again.
Next, it's my distinct honor to welcome our dear friend and community member, Representative Anna Eshoo. Honorable Anna Eshoo has been the only member of Congress from the Armenian and Assyrian descent and a longtime friend, leader, and trailblazer on the recognition of the Armenian Genocide and on justice for the people of Artsakh. And it's been, just if I can personally say, seeing you here over many years has been wonderful, and we'll miss you, and know that you're doing your best to get these bills over the finish line before you leave, and we're so grateful. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. First, to our beautiful spiritual leader. Without our faith, we are but tin symbols. And so the faith of our people is what has carried us through dark days and better days. And so thank you for you. This commemoration is bittersweet to me because, as I think you all know by now, I announced that I'm not going to be seeking re-election. So next year, this time, I'll be doing this at home at St. Andrews. But today I'm with you. So it was said, that I'm the only member of the Congress now of both Armenian and Assyrian descent. And, we gather every April. You are a very patient audience to listen to each one of us, to commemorate this and remember them. Our martyrs, as Father said. 1.5 million martyrs. I remember being in Armenia, and it was declared that they were all saints. That they were all saints. It was such a beautiful, beautiful moment. There were hundreds of thousands of Assyrians, Greeks, as Gus Baucus said, the Chaldeans, the Syriacs, the Arameans, the Maronites, who were systematically slaughtered by the Ottoman Empire between 1915 and 1923. What all of the victims had in common is that they were Christians. That's what they had in common. And so that faith, the faith that they held, that they have been declared saints, and the faith that we bring forward today, regardless of all of the faith backgrounds of the members of Congress. So it was, it was really quite a day in 2019 when we ended over 100 years of U.S. silence on the Armenian Genocide. That all of them were recognized. I think I heard them clapping in heaven, all of them, including my relatives who were lost in that. It doesn't mean that that most of our work or the majority of our work is done. We know from what fellow Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, they brought them to their knees after, 9 months. Food, medicine, all those necessary supplies were held from them. And then at gunpoint, they fled with only what they had on their backs. So there's something very wrong and immoral about this picture of what has taken place. It's up to us and the faith that we have in each other, and the faith in justice, faith in decency, understanding that these are ungodlike actions that take place in this world, and it's up to us to address them. I'm looking at Adam Schiff. Adam's going to be the next senator from U.S. Senators. And you have all lifted him up. You have all lifted him up. So more than anything else, what I want to say to you is thank you. The Armenian National Committee and the Armenian Assembly of America, you are very important. You are very important. And you can't fire a volunteer, right? No one's being paid for any of this. This is all, it's driven by volunteerism. But your willingness to stick with the organizations, because as you know, Congress is not a proactive institution. I thought before I came here that when I did, that we would bring experts in, we would study, we would read their books, and then we would decide what's best and then draw the bills. I don't know what got into me. It was, Congress is reactive. It's a reactive institution. It reacts to what the people in this country bring here to us. And many efforts take a long time. But you know what? As long as it takes, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Today, Armenia is poised and looking to the West. And we need to respond to that. This is a very unique moment in history. And there are so many ways, important steps that we need to take here in Congress to accept that this moment in history, to strengthen it in every way, in every way. I would like to see the Prime Minister of Armenia come to the United States this year and meet with the President of the United States and come to the Congress. Won't that be wonderful? I think we should all for it. My colleagues have expressed eloquently the accountability and the steps that we need to take in terms of Azerbaijan. This man is a monster, and he's not being held accountable in the appropriate ways. But as Armenia looks to the West, Congress has to be strong to deal with the accountability, but also to assist Armenia to be all that she can be in the 21st century. So, my friends, I love all of you. I will miss my work with you here, but I'll do it from home. You have my prayers, and you have my love. till I close my eyes to this world. So thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It's now my honor to introduce Congressman Adam Schiff, who is also co-chair of the Armenian Caucus and represents the largest Armenian American constituency in the House of Representatives. He's been a leader on so many issues, including House Resolution 861, demanding the safe and immediate return of American POWs. Congressman Schiff, welcome.
Much. It's a great honor to follow Anna Eshoo, someone who has been such a magnificent champion for the Armenian community in Congress and such a fabulous colleague. She will be irreplaceable. I want to thank you for inviting me tonight and for traveling from all over the country to be here. As many of you know, I represent California's 30th district, home to one of the largest Armenian diasporas in the world. It is a great privilege to join you here as we commemorate 109 years since the Ottoman Empire began their concerted and systematic effort to destroy the Armenian people. This month, 109 years ago, Armenians from all walks of life were rounded up and brutally murdered. Writers and artists, business owners and clergy were tortured and burned alive in churches, infants stolen from their parents' arms. Over 1 million men, women, and children, 1.5 million indeed. Entire families wiped out in the most brutal, heartbreaking of ways. All of you here likely have someone in your family tree who suffered under the tragedy of this genocide. And yet, despite overwhelming and ever-increasing evidence of this methodical mass killing, Turkey has engaged in a long and dangerous campaign to deny the genocide and to silence anyone who seeks to speak the truth. Because of the district I represent, I've had the honor to sit with survivors. I've been welcomed into their homes. I've listened to their stories of how their parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents were murdered, how their property and the lives their families built were destroyed. I watched them relive the pain over and over, reopening the wound to keep their family's history alive. And while we are gathered this month to commemorate these atrocities, there was a time when Washington refused to recognize these methodical killings for what they were, genocide, the first of the 20th century. Over many, many years, we worked tirelessly to convince our colleagues in Congress, presidents of both parties, and the American people of the importance of formally recognizing the Armenian Genocide. And I'm so proud that in 2019, I had the honor of carrying the resolution that officially recognized the Armenian Genocide and passed by a near unanimous and bipartisan vote. Woo! In 2021, President Biden became the first president in office to set aside decades of shameful silence and recognize the Armenian Genocide. These historic achievements took place because of a resilient and enduring Armenian diaspora and decades of work. It is a testament to thousands of activists, organizations, communities, and faith leaders, a victory for human rights and for the truth itself. And it's something that we all achieved working together, but there is so much work that remains to be done. These wounds are still open. They have not yet healed, and in some tragic ways, they have grown larger. Even in California, the Armenian cemetery in Fresno was targeted by arson. During the same month, Armenian families gathered to remember those lost to genocide. It is so deeply hurtful and reminds us how important it is to stamp out hate wherever it is found. Abroad, and to this day, President Aliyev of Azerbaijan continues to echo the genocidal language and actions of a century ago, and with the support of Turkey. They attacked Artsakh in 2020. They blockaded Nagorno-Karabakh for nearly 10 months, starting in December 2022, and then in 2023, the Aliyev regime took control of a people they had systematically starved and ethnically cleansed, Artsakh's indigenous Armenian population. So as we mark the 109th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide with pledges of never again, the democratic and peaceful Armenian people face threats that echo their darkest days. The time for strong statements by the administration alone have long passed. Condemnation must be followed by real consequences. Crimes against humanity cannot be ignored and cannot go unanswered. On this solemn anniversary, as we pause to remember the innocent victims of the genocide, we reflect on the resilience of those who survived, the perseverance of their children and grandchildren who built lives in the United States and around the world, who speak their beautiful Armenian language, enrich every nation with Armenian culture and heritage. Despite the horrors of the genocide, the Armenian people have faced and continue to face enduring threats. It has not broken their faith, determination, or will to survive. The Armenian people have overcome the harshest of trials, and they remain strong and unbowed in Southern California, in Yerevan, and around the world. And I'm proud to be before you and to say that I will always stand with the Armenian community. Yes, misht bidi ganknin, hai hamainki gokin.
Before we move on to our next speaker, I just want to acknowledge that former U.S. Ambassador John Evans is with us this evening. A true hero and a model of courage that we can all emulate. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage the Honorable Sanford Bishop. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Astrid Bishop, and I'm from Georgia. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, because we are here to celebrate a solemn, to remember a solemn occasion. The attempted extermination of the Armenian people in the Ottoman Empire, one of the first genocides in the 20th century, shook America to the core. In response, the U.S. launched a massive humanitarian aid effort. And while our aid could not bring back the lives of the homeland lost, our country did become a refuge for the survivors. Though the 2019 resolution, which I supported, reaffirmed congressional recognition of that genocide, Armenians still face the threat of extermination. Last September, the indigenous Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh were expelled from their homeland. For decades, they were told that their cultural heritage, a desire to live under a government of their own choosing, meant that they were unwelcome in their own lands. The existential threat that Armenians face in the Caucasus is a reminder to us all that we continue to live the consequences of the Armenian genocide. Peace remains elusive when hatred, bigotry, and authoritarianism thrive. From Russia and Ukraine, through the Caucasus and the Middle East to Israel and Gaza, American interests in the region and security are inevitably affected by these conflicts, and they demand our engagement. Our engagement to support a just and a peaceful resolution. Congress cannot be a bystander. I've been in Congress for 32 years, and for many of those years, often I opened my office and welcomed advocates for Armenia. They came and they continue to come, asking to be heard. If there's something from which we can draw hope in all of this, it is the survivors. As those Armenians come to my office, I listened over the years, but a couple of years ago, I had a young man to come and work for me, who's now my communications director, Lorig Charkoudian. And he brought to my office and to me a passion for the Armenian issues that I had not realized before. So I'm here because of Lorig, but because of a righteous cause. Armenians have done so much, contributed to the communities in which they live here in the United States, and making our country, as you can see, a richer and a better and a more diverse place. So take solace in the fact that we hear you, both from the far reaches of our districts to the halls of Capitol Hill. I thank you for your advocacy. I thank you for your civic engagement, because they are crucial to holding this Congress accountable and inspiring our country to live up to its lofty ideals.
Costa, who is a member from the Central Valley of California and who has lived among Armenians who were survivors of the Armenian Genocide. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Aram, and I come from the land of Waves Roy. When you grow up with the Khazarians and the Abrahamians and the Galicians, you learn as a young boy the stories of the Armenian diaspora. From the time I was 10 years old, I can remember Duran Galician telling me, as a young boy, this horrific story. You could not believe that people would do that to people. I never forgot. You know, the Armenian National Committee here this evening and the young people that are here that are now a part of that, we celebrate you because you're passing the torch to a new generation of Armenian Americans. And that is important. That is important for so many reasons. This is my 20th year in Congress, and I remember the years before when we would say we must pass the resolution recognizing the Armenian Genocide. And in those early days, you still had some people who came that were actually there during the Armenian Genocide. Frank remembers. And your passion and your tenacious, heartfelt efforts paid off. It finally happened. And President Biden finally recognized it. But clearly more work needs to be done. Sadly, notwithstanding the history you share, ethnic cleansing continues to take place in Artsakh, with over 120,000 Armenians displaced from their homeland, leading to the exodus of that region's population. And we must do something about it. Since 2022, the president of Azerbaijan, like President Putin, has orchestrated deliberate attacks and weaponized starvation against the Armenian people, forcing them in exile, and they are not through unless we draw the line. Believe me. Azerbaijan and Turkey must be held accountable. We can start, as Frank Pallone said, and others, by halting any military aid to Azerbaijan. should be an outrage. Last week, in committee hearing, USAID Administrator Samantha Power testified before the House Committee that they had worked out efforts to move forward in Belgium with $65 million in additional aid. And I said, that's a good start, but we must do more. And in the package that we have this week, there is additional assistance for humanitarian assistance, but we must do more. And therefore, your consistency and your support this week and throughout the country, throughout the world, recognizing the genocide that took place, the first genocide in the 20th century, is important. It's important because we must continue to keep faith. As Anna Eshoo said so beautifully, Anna's like she's a friend and a motivator to all of us. Her story, her parents' story, who lived in Fresno, reminds us all of all of your stories. And we will miss her so much. She is such a heartfelt, wonderful member of Congress. Yes, she is. That deserves a round of applause. So we recognize the tasks ahead of us. Next week, I will be with my friends, my Armenian friends in Fresno in the morning, and we will raise the Armenian flag at City Hall, recognizing the importance of this week. And that evening, we will go to Fresno State University, where the only memorial that exists in any university in America dedicated to recognizing the genocide that took place. And there will be so many wonderful people there, but with young people remembering that we shall never, ever forget. And that's why we recognize a heartfelt suffering. And that's why we pay tribute and we honor the martyrs. God bless. Thank you.
Costa. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Congressman Seth Moulton, who is a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and we're thrilled to have him with us tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here representing a thriving Armenian community in Massachusetts, and I'm honored to be part of this solemn remembrance. 109 years ago, the first genocide of the 20th century began. Over 1 million Armenians were systematically exterminated in a campaign of killing that defied description. So much so that a lawyer named Raphael Lemkin had to invent a new term, genocide, to describe it. We stand here today to remember those who were killed and to honor the generations of those who have kept their legacies alive. But we also stand here to testify to the truth. There are those who continue to try to deny this horror, to hide behind lies and historical inaccuracies, because denial is a powerful political tool. And it's one we see today in countries like China and Russia, as they hide behind lies to cover up their atrocities. But the power of this commemoration, and of the memory that you are preserving, is that the truth will always win. It serves as a reminder to oppressors everywhere that though they may try to evade and deny and suppress, they cannot eliminate the truth. I'm proud that Congress has spoken the truth by recognizing this genocide. And I'm proud that President Biden has done so as well. Yet another basic truth is that the suffering of the Armenian people has not ended. Again, the Armenian people were plunged into bloodshed after Azerbaijan's attacks in 2020 and again in 2023. But just as they did in the aftermath of genocide, the Armenian people will rebuild. The Armenian people will preserve their vibrant culture. They will tell the truth, and they will prosper. and the United States and this Congress will stand with them. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Representative Gabe Agrawal, and he is the newest member of Congress. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that as a new member of Congress, his first act as a member was to co-sponsor a priority piece of legislation on Artsakh. So we're grateful for the beginnings of it. And
Good evening, everyone. It is great to be here, and I am thankful for all of the work of the Armenian National Committee, the National Assembly, to continue to make the case not only to those of us in the halls of Congress, but people around the country of the urgency of the issues that we face. I want to start by stating 3 real key truths. 1, the freedom-loving people of Armenia deserve to live in peace and security, free from the existential threats that they face on their borders, period. 2, the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, is the ancestral home of the Armenian people, full stop, without dispute. And 3, we cannot and we will not be silent in the aftermath of Azerbaijan's brutal ethnic cleansing campaign in Artsakh. At this moment, this critical moment in our history, our collective dedication to Armenia, to peace, and to protecting human rights is essential. Tonight, we gather to discuss the current state of affairs and how the United States can help. And I remain committed to doing everything that I can as a new member of Congress. It's in fact 6 months since I've been sworn in, to be part of this effort. We must denounce the destabilizing threat that the Azerbaijani government poses. We must also stand in solidarity with the journalists who have been threatened, because we know how important it is to tell the truth. To the citizens who have been silenced, who are merely doing their right in communicating the atrocities, and of course, the freedom-loving people who have been forced to flee their homes. And I know that I am your ally in our fight to preserve and protect Armenia. As you heard, I have the honor of serving on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And as a member of the Congressional Caucus on Armenia, it's so dutifully led by Frank Pallone and Gus Baucus, 2 leaders here in our Congress. I have been honored to be part of their effort to hold the Azerbaijani government accountable and make sure that this bipartisan Armenian Protection Act does what it intends, and make sure that military assistance does not flow in that direction. So, to me, our support for Armenia is an essential part of our foreign policy. It is part of our fight for freedom everywhere across the world. And so I thank you all for being here again as we shine as defenders of human rights and promoters of democracy, and as we approach this Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. Know that we have a continued obligation, not just in the Armenian community, but for all of us around this country. And to my constituents at home in Rhode Island, I know that they see this as essential. And so I speak for them in recognizing and commemorating and making sure that when we say never again, we follow through, we mean it, and we make sure that no one sees these atrocities, especially in Armenia.
Next, I'd like to welcome Representative Chris Smith, who is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. Welcome.
Thank you for giving us all the opportunity to remember, to pray for the families that lost so much, for the souls who lost their lives during the infamous genocide, which still Turkey refuses to recognize and acknowledge. You know, when Konrad Adenauer recognized the Holocaust, at least there was a turning of the page that, yes, horrible things were done to Jews during the Second World War, during the Holocaust. We still, to this day, do not have an acknowledgement and a request for forgiveness for the brutality. I chaired a hearing during the Clinton administration on the Armenian Genocide, and in anticipation I read Morgenthau's book, Ambassador Morgenthau's book. I was floored. I thought I knew about the Holocaust, and then I read that and just got a contemporaneous account of what occurred during those infamous years. We invited both sides. I had the people from Turkey, an ambassador from Turkey, and he was so arrogant and so condescending, he even said, "You keep this up, we'll take your base away in Incirlik." And off, Kender, go ahead, we'll move it to Greece. I was shocked and dismayed by the arrogance. And we are extremely sorry. They're not sorry. I've had 3 hearings in total on the Armenian Genocide, every time learning much more, trying to remember and to get all of us to remember. You do it. More of my colleagues need to do it, and we are. There's a growing bipartisan sense of this. You know, who remembers the Armenians, the infamous saying that may have enabled in some way the Holocaust. And twice I've been to Baku and met with Aliyev there. I met with him in one case for almost an hour and argued with him about what they were doing to Nagorno-Karabakh and, of course, what he was doing to his own people and the use of torture and all of the other human rights abuses for their people. Aliyev, too, gets far too much support in this country. Oil should not cause people to look the other way to his atrocities. And when he was using, like Mengistu in Ethiopia, food as a weapon, I convened an emergency hearing to talk about the terrible, terrible use of food, or lack of, for the Armenian, for the people. They did change it, but they continued their atrocities, as we all know. So more has to be done. Yesterday I chaired yet another hearing on Turkey. Now Turkey, as we all know, a fomenter under Erdogan of one atrocity after another. Back again during the Clinton administration, 1999, I chaired a hearing about their pervasive use of torture. They use torture all the time against dissidents, against Kurds, against just about everybody who in this case doesn't support the Erdogan regime. Yesterday we had Enes Freedom testify, and he was brilliant in his defense of the people who are suffering from Erdogan. He will be here, as you know, on March 9th, and we need to greet him. I plan on putting together a press conference, Erdogan this is, here, to raise these issues so that the press cannot, as they do so often, ignore, trivialize. They don't debunk it, but they do trivialize by their lack of coverage about what has happened past and what is happening today, present. We pray for the people of Armenia. We stand in solidarity with them. I have introduced legislation preventing ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh. It has not passed yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But we need policies that have their back 1,000%. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to welcome to the podium Representative Dina Titus. She's a Greek American and a champion of the plight of those who suffered under the rule of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. She's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a leader on a number of efforts to hold Turkey and Azerbaijan accountable for their acts of aggression. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Holy Father, and thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to see you all again, even under these kinds of circumstances. And I thank you all for bringing us together so that we do never forget. Frank Pallone, who chairs the Armenian caucus, I'm proud to be a member of. He deserves your appreciation, too, for his leadership. You know, I am I'm Greek, and I've said many times that we have a lot in common. Well, our cultures are similar, our religions are similar, our food and music are similar, and we have common enemies, and we never forget that. In my district, which is the heart of Las Vegas, you have St. Garabid's Armenian Orthodox Church, and you also have the Armenian Genocide Memorial of Nevada located there, where we have a service every year. So you are well represented in Las Vegas and among my constituents in District 1. So thank you for all you do there. Now, you've heard a lot about the genocide. You know all about it. It was the first, but certainly not the last. And what's happening around the world shows that we are in such turbulent times. And Armenia, again, is at the center of that. You know, after nearly a year blockade of the Lachen corridor, many Artsakh's 120,000 Armenians just about starved to death, and had very little help from the international community to ease these tensions, and they didn't pay attention to what there was there and continued their assault. So we can't mince words. I agree with our previous speakers. You've got to call out ethnic cleansing with the genocidal intent and put a stop to it in every means that we have. You can't let families be forced from their homes, children who are denied food and water, who can't go to school, the Christian landmarks that have been defaced and destroyed. These are just not things that we should see in the modern world. So I've said many times the U.S. and the entire international community needs to stand up and condemn this full-throatedly and work to bring it to a halt, and that's my commitment to you. We've got to also provide additional humanitarian aid and assistance to those who were displaced and to help with a sustained return if that's what they want to do. Protection of their rights and security regardless of their choices. I'm proud that as part of the caucus, I've signed on to many resolutions and bills, but one of the things I'm especially proud of, and it's a small thing, but it's very symbolic, is that I led the fight to get the Library of Congress to change the wording so that it recognized genocide in all of its listings. For that and pushing that through, and I think it does say a lot about our intentions. I'm also planning to introduce next week what's going to be called the Azerbaijan Sanctions Review Act of 2020. This will impose various sanctions on the Azerbaijani officials who directed or carried out the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. It's time that we make them pay, impose cost on them for this kind of action. So I'll need your help again to get your representatives to sign on to this bill and see if we can get it passed. You know, just a few months ago, His Holiness Aram I came and gave the opening prayer to the House. And what a statement that was. That's the first time anybody from the Catholicos, from the Armenian Orthodox Church, gave that prayer. And I think it was symbolic of the resilience of the people of Armenia, the acceptance that we in the Congress have for them and their plight, and it just said a lot about solidifying the relationship between our two countries. So His Holiness's visit should always remain a reminder to us of that solid bond that we share. So you can always count on me. And I'm sorry I don't have my little forget-me-not pen. It's in Las Vegas, but I promise you I'll not forget. Thank you.
We are grateful for all the members of Congress who have joined us today, and we're also going to pause their comments briefly for a keynote speech. We have a very special guest here, a member of the French Parliament, Astrid Panosyan-Bouvet. Astrid Panosyan-Bouvet is a French Armenian politician and businesswoman. She was honored as a Knight of the National Order of Merit and was presented this accolade by President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace. She's She's a co-founder of La République en Marche, a centrist and liberal political party in France. Panosyan has held key roles in various prominent organizations, including Société des Tanines SA and Unibal Radonco SE. Sorry, my French is not so good. Demonstrating, but what I do know is that those organizations demonstrate her expertise in business and leadership. With a prestigious educational background from institutions like HEC Paris and Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, Panosyan has excelled in shaping economic attractiveness and international investments during her tenure as an advisor to the French Minister of the Economy, Industry, and Digital Affairs. We are honored to have you with us tonight.
Dear friends, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here at the heart of the U.S. institutions and the American democracy. I've been kindly invited by the Armenian Assembly of America to discuss the very special relationship between France and Armenia that, to convey with the words of President Macron, is of special color, of special devotion, and of special soul. In supporting Armenia today, France wants to acknowledge the very specific and unique contribution of the Armenian immigrants to the French nation in terms of arts and culture, entrepreneurship and economic development, and nation building and values such as the display for Manouchian, the resistance fighter against the Nazi, who led his battalion composed of Armenians, Jews, Italians, and Spaniards during the Second World War. It also wants to acknowledge the symbol of what Armenia, the young Republic of Armenia, stands for today: call for universal justice, a bold move towards further democratization, rule of law, fight against corruption, and anchoring to the West vis-à-vis Russia and its threatening neighbors. And finally, it wants to recognize its fight for its millennial presence, religious freedom, and cultural identity. France was the first major Western country to recognize the Armenian Genocide 23 years ago. And the recognition 3 years ago by President Biden was a sign of remembrance and universal justice, welcomed not only by Armenians all around the world, but by all democrats and democracies around the world. But I actually cried when I heard that President Biden acknowledged the Armenian genocide. So this is a true symbol for us. But since 2020, the territorial aggressions by Azerbaijan with the terrible 44 days war, the blockade, the cleansing of Artsakh, the incursion and daily threats, and this existential threat that has been displayed and discussed here, have shown Armenia's incredible vulnerability. The military budget of Azerbaijan is 3 to 4 times that of Armenia. The supposedly guardian and honest broker of Armenian interests in the region, i.e. Russia, did not commit to defending Armenia in 2020, nor last year. So Armenia is very, very much alone, and the only democracy in the region have taken strong stance in the face of this new geopolitical situation. The freeze of its participation into the Russian-backed CSTO, the joining as a new member state of the International Criminal Court, which Moscow denounced as unfriendly. And given its strong ties, France has decided not to let Armenia alone. It signed last October a strategic partnership with the Republic of Armenia that was materialized by the first visit ever of the French defense minister in Yerevan last month, together with very, very concrete steps. And I want to thank you for acknowledging as well the need for more military assistance coming from the United States. These steps include the appointment of military attaché in Yerevan, the appointment of a French military advisor to the Armenian Defense Ministry with an audit to be delivered on the current ground-to-air system of Armenia, training programs and purchase of equipment aimed at modernizing the Armenian army and increase its defense capability, radars, night vision goggles, high-precision rifles, and soon-to-be tanks. Again, only defensive. And finally, the setup in Syunik, this very much exposed part of Armenia, the setup of a French consulate with a Western flag right across the Israeli border. My question to American diplomats based in Paris and to my fellow American legislators is, why can't America do the same? In the name of the values the U.S. stand for, and I particularly stand for those values as a Fulbright scholar, so I know what America, represents to the rest of the world. In the name of the contribution of the Armenian Americans to this nation, but also, first of all, in the name of American interests and aimed at stability, territorial integrity, and avoiding the risk of potential escalation in an already very inflammatory region. This strategic partnership between France and Armenia is also, of course, reinforced by business and cultural cooperations, supporting UNESCO inspections that will have to come of the Armenian cultural sites tarnished in Artsakh right now, and supporting the UNESCO inscription of the Garni temple as well, because there are so many important cultural heritage in Armenia as well. The opening of the new Oriental Christian Arts Aisle in the Louvre, where Armenia will be particularly represented. And of course, the development of the French-Armenian University in Yerevan with already 2,000 enrolled students. So these strong ties are not only just displayed at the central and executive level, they're also on what we call the parliament diplomacy, and I believe in the strength of parliamentary diplomacy. And the friendship group, the French-Armenian Friendship Group at the National Assembly, being the largest group. We have 90 members out of the 75 members. And that has conducted us to welcome the son of Ruben Vardanyan, to also remind us that we have political prisoners in Baku, that we need to free them. We have also written a resolution voted unanimously by all the parties for the right of return of the people from Artsakh and a call for sanctions against Azerbaijan. But we have also the support of municipalities. And what I really like about it is that municipalities where you have sometimes no Armenian constituents, because the Armenian cause is now supported by people who have no Armenian roots. It's just the symbol of justice and the ties that held France and Armenia together. So you have a series of decentralized cooperations at the city level, involving not just Paris, Lyon, Marseille, but well beyond. And I just want to salute here the example of the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, who is also chairing the coalition of capital cities at the COP and the against climate change, and she committed that she won't go to the COP held by Baku next year. Despite the very strong engagements she has for climate change. So even though she's not my political party, I really want to recognize her courage. So to conclude, my friends and my dear American friends, whenever I'm in Washington, I like to stroll by the National Mall to remind me of, the great lessons of what this great nation has brought to the world. And I went this early morning, probably due to the jet lag, and stopping by the Lincoln Memorial, the FDR, Jefferson Memorial, and that have inspired generations across the world, including me. And I really hope, very modestly, that the support displayed by France to Armenia to show that Armenia is not alone will inspire you, my American friends, in return. Thank you very much.
We're so grateful for France's friendship to the Armenian people over decades, a century, and so grateful that you could join us today to share those remarks. Next, I'd like to welcome Senator Gary Peters. In 2023, Senator Peters went to the Lachen corridor, witnessing firsthand Azerbaijan's blockade and the hundreds of humanitarian trucks waiting to provide assistance to Artsakh. A week after his return, Azerbaijan attacked Artsakh, leading to the mass exodus of the Armenians from their ancestral homeland. In November 2023, Senator Peters led S-3000, calling for an end to all military assistance to Azerbaijan, and was able to pass it through the Senate unanimously. Welcome.
Thank you. It's truly an honor to be here in this commemoration of one of the darkest chapters of our history in the world, and it is wonderful to follow a French parliamentarian to talk about our friendship between the United States and friendship with Armenia. And it has a special meaning to me, and in your opening comments talked about the fight against Nazis in the Second World War. I am proud to say that I am the son of a former French citizen and a war bride from the Second World War. My mother lived in Reims, and as a young girl, when the Nazis came in and attacked, and they had to evacuate, her stories of that evacuation are horrific. As they headed south, for example, to get away from the Nazis who were attacking France, the French forces were heading north. And as they were heading south, the Luftwaffe came in and strafed the soldiers, and many folks were killed, including the car right in front of them, which had a French family that blew up, and everybody who they knew were killed in that horrible incident. And she lived under Nazi occupation. So you can imagine what is instilled in me about standing up against totalitarianism and authoritarianism, and how we need to fight for justice and freedom. And that's what this event is about with the Armenian Genocide. Again, one of the darkest moments in the history of our world. I had the opportunity to travel to Yerevan. I was there in September of last year, actually after the bombs were being dropped by Azerbaijan. I am blessed, and I say that very humbly, with one of the amazing Armenian American community in Detroit. I see some of my friends here. Terrified and worried so much about their fellow countrymen and what was happening in Nagorno-Karabakh. I wanted to go there personally to see how I could be helpful. I was there right, as I mentioned, during the attack. We were at the Lachen corridor and looked out with a blockade. And here's a blockade that went on for months and months, that forced people into starvation and not access to critical medicines, and to live under really horrific situation. And before I made that trip, I had a little bit of perspective, because in Yerevan I went to the Genocide Museum. And anyone who doesn't really know, and I would say that's most Americans, don't know what really happened to them. This is something they hear about, but no one can really see what happened. To go to that museum and to see the images, it is truly horrific. It's horrific, and you wonder how human beings can be so inhumane against others, and to be so brutal and so cruel and devastate people. It is a memory that I will always have in the back of my mind as we work on issues around the world. Unfortunately, this continues in other places around the world. But as I stood on the hill. I was taking Lachen corridor, and I stood during the blockade. It was the day before a lot of the folks were being pushed out of Nagorno-Karabakh, and we know that this is basically ethnic cleansing that Azerbaijan was engaged in. It was something that is unacceptable. And it's frustrating to me that the world community did not do enough to call this out for the outrage that it was and it is. That you have 100,000 people who have been kicked out of their homes and the place in which they grew up and they love, and it's the place where they felt secure and safe, but they could not feel that way because of the atrocities by the Azerbaijanis. So that's why when I got back, I figured here we are, the United States government is actually providing military assistance to Azerbaijan. And in the waiver that we have, all you probably know these details as well as I do, probably more than I know with the waiver. But it says specifically in the waiver, you will not get this assistance if you are involved in any kind of blockade or any kind of military activity in Nagorno-Karabakh. Well, clearly they violated that in the most spectacular way. They should not get any assistance from the United States government when that is occurring. It's outrageous. So I drafted legislation to do just that. We brought it before the United States Senate, and I'm happy to say the United States Senate passed it unanimously. We passed it out of the United States. Just saying, not a lot happens unanimously in the United States Senate. Just saying that. It was overwhelming support. And now I'm hoping, I've got amazing friends here, chairman of a great committee who I love, who's been a friend a long time, and Representative Sherman, thank you, and Chairman Pallone. We need to pass it in the United States House now. We need to make a statement. Condition on that. When we put a condition, it actually has to have some teeth to it. It has to say if you violate this, there are consequences. The United States stands up for freedom. We stand up for liberty. We stand up against ethnic cleansing. And if people violate those tenets, we will make sure that those folks pay a price. And that's what this legislation is about. I need your help to continue to push this forward. Together we can do it. In addition to hearing from my amazing friends in the Armenian American community in Detroit, I was truly touched by my experience in Armenia. They were some of the warmest, most wonderful people that I've ever had the privilege of being with. And the fact that the Armenian people have been subjected to such horrific atrocities over history is unacceptable. And to me, for us as Americans, folks who pride liberty and freedom and understanding the basic human rights and how that's fundamental to our government, if we let the Armenian people down, it's a violation of our very core values. I promise you, each and every one of you, I will never let that happen. As long as I'm a United States Senator, I will continue to fight for Armenia.
A longtime friend of the Armenian community, Representative Red Sherman, who, among other things, led the charge on the first U.S. assistance package to Artsakh over 25 years ago. We're grateful for that and grateful for all your work since then. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from California's best named city, Sherman Oaks. It is a pleasure to be with you again, but a sad day as we recognize the tragedy of over 100 years ago, and we recognize the tragedy of just last year. For 28 years I've served on the Foreign Affairs Committee. For 28 years I've joined under Frank Pallone as an active member of the Armenia Caucus. When Jews remember the Holocaust, we are taught that to forget the name of a single victim is to kill them again. Well, Turkey and Azerbaijan demand that we, in effect, re-kill 1.5 million victims of the first genocide of the 20th century. we won't do that. We will remember, because genocide denial is the last step of a genocide. First the people are obliterated, and then they try to obliterate their memory. But genocide denial is also the first step in the next genocide, because it inspires tyrants to believe that they can get away with it. And who will forget when Adolf Hitler had to convince the people around him that he could get away with it? He turned to them and said, "Who today remembers the Armenians?" Well, here we are in 2024, and we remember the Armenians. Those who were subject to the genocide, and those who were driven from their ancient homes in Artsakh. And we are told that Turkey is a strategic ally, and that somehow we must forget the past in order to get along. I ask, what kind of relationship would we have with today's Germany if there was a Germany who demanded that we forget the Holocaust? We can have a relationship with Turkey when it's a true democratic country that comes to grips with its Ottoman past. And we must remember that the strength of America is not on how many aircraft carrier groups we have or how many nuclear missiles we have, but how true we stay to our values, to what makes America great. And that starts when we finally, successfully, first in the House, then in the Senate, and then with the presidency, remembered the first genocide of the 21st century, of the 20th century. See that almost a repetition. The genocide of 1915 began when the Ottoman Empire began cleansing its northeastern border regions of Armenians and sending them fleeing. We saw it again when 120,000 plus Armenians had to flee their homes in Artsakh. Ankara and Baku continue their policies of genocide denial. They continued with the pogroms of 1988 and 1990 in Baku and Sumgayit, and they continued with the ethnic cleansing of Armenians just 2 months ago. So the question is, how do we respond? Well, we provide additional aid to the refugees. People ask me, how are we going to finance that? I'm just about the only CPA in Congress, so people expect me to be financially responsible. I'll tell you where we start. We start by ending all aid to Azerbaijan. We can no longer waive Section 907. And we have to show there's consequences for what happened. And we can learn a lot from our experiences with Ukraine. Long before 2022, I was one of the advocates for arming Ukraine. We did very little, and now we see a war. Well, we've heard Alia. He doesn't want to stop with Artsakh. He claims that Yerevan is built on Azeri territory. Some of us have studied the days of Rome and Persia, and we know that Baku is on Armenian territory. The Armenians were in this area and throughout the southern Caucasus 1,000 years before Turks, Azeri, Ottoman, Seljuk, or whatever moved to the area. Now, I'm not suggesting that we support Armenian claims to Baku, but I am suggesting that when a man announces, a dictator announces that he has aggression on the mind, that we should respond before the aggression, something we could have learned with Artsakh and something we need to learn with Azerbaijan. Now the big bill before us is the now 4-part big supplemental bill. It's being called the Taiwan bill, the Ukraine bill, the Israel bill, the Gaza bill. It is also the Armenia bill. Because last week I got a commitment on the record at the hearing from Samantha Powers, who heads USAID, our foreign aid organization, that if this bill passes, there will be American programs to help those who had to flee and now have to live in Yerevan and elsewhere in Armenia. Now that's not true justice. True justice is when those people can return to their ancestral homes where they lived for 1,000 and more years in Artsakh. But until that happens, Armenia needs the aid that the administration has promised us if this bill passes, and I think it will pass. So we have a long way to go. We have got to make sure that Armenia is safe. We have to impose sanctions on Azerbaijan. We have to work for the return of the refugees to their historic homes. And we need to do it together. So I look forward to working with all of you to have an American foreign policy that reflects our values and that reflects the needs of the Armenian people. I'm Brad Sherman. Thank you very much.
How fortunate we are to have Congressman Sherman fighting for us. I want to acknowledge a coalition partner in the room. William Roberts with In Defense of Christians is here. As we all know, our members of Congress have courageously worked on behalf of Armenia and the Armenian community, but it is also their staffers who inspire them and who really make things happen. And so we're really excited to have members of the Congressional Armenian Staffers Association here today. We have two who will be speaking with us. First, we'll hear from Natalia Matosyan, who is a board member of the Congressional Armenian Staffers Association.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia Matosyan, and I am an Armenian American staffer and a member of the board of the Congressional Armenian Staff Association. It's an honor to be here to speak with you all, especially after such a lineup of distinguished speakers. And I'm excited to tell you briefly about our organization's history and our goals. What started nearly a decade ago as an informal gathering of Armenian Americans looking to create a sense of community here on the Hill is now officially recognized as a staff association by the U.S. House Committee on Administration. We have over 30 members from all over the country on both sides of the aisle and in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. Our mission is to support Armenian Americans working in Congress through professional networking and development, and to encourage the future generations of Armenian Americans to pursue this public service. I know I, for one, owe my being here to the network that I built through the Staff Association, as well as many of the people in this room. But not only do we help each other, but our diverse experiences as Armenian Americans can help Congress respond to many of the issues that it faces every day. One of our greatest strengths is the fortitude and the determination that is passed down from our parents and grandparents, many of whom were survivors of the Armenian Genocide. Even when faced with what seem to be overwhelming odds, we persevere and find a solution with the hope of creating a better tomorrow. Though this is a solemn occasion, you can take hope in knowing that descendants of genocide survivors are now a part of the conscience and beating heart of Congress, and they are doing their utmost to create a better future. Thank you.
And in the ever-changing schedule of Congress members, we're thrilled that Representative Jamal Bowman was able to join us, so please come on up.
Good evening. How's everyone doing? All right, good. Thank you all for being here. It's great to be with you and work in collaboration with you. I'm Congressman Jamal Bowman. I represent the 16th District of New York. Is New York in the house? Okay. Is the Bronx in the house? No! Not a single person from New York. Is Westchester, New York in the house? Yeah. Okay, all right, there we go. 2 from Westchester. All right. Well, my district is the Northeast Bronx as well as Southern Westchester. Just wanted to say hello. You all look great. Please tell your family and friends and community to be in touch with my office back home so we can work in collaboration on whatever issues matter to you, whether it's IRS, immigration, passport, education, etc., etc., etc. We are there to serve you. I want to recognize something very specifically. I am very happy that the president a few years ago recognized and called out the Armenian Genocide. I'm happy that he did that. Round of applause for that. It was long overdue. So once again, it's good to be with you. God bless you. I'm going to hang out for a little while. Would love to meet everyone, say hello, and learn more about your story and learn more about what issues are more important to you, okay? God bless you. Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to be able to welcome Representative Tom McClintock to the stage, and he is a proud member of the Armenian Caucus, and we're appreciative that you came today.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the United States Capitol. Obviously, we're here to remember the 1.5 million innocent Armenians, men, women, and children, slaughtered by the Ottoman Turks in the first genocide of the 20th century. These good people were uprooted from their homes and their communities and placed in the ghastly death march that history recoils from today. Unspeakable atrocities, unparalleled cruelty, and mass murder make this one of the most infamous crimes in the history of humanity. Those who survived this great tragedy became a diaspora that has spread the history and the story of the victims and the pride and resilience of Armenia to every corner of the world. These wounds will never heal, but because of the survivors and their descendants, their story will never be forgotten. Moreover, the Armenian diaspora has enhanced every country where it's landed. Nowhere is that more true than here in the United States, that shining city on a hill that Lincoln described as the last best hope of mankind on this earth. From small business to law to politics to agriculture and beyond, Armenian Americans have made the communities for all of their neighbors as Armenians live the American dream. They built churches and schools to teach their children the traditional values of love and caring for each other and for their community. But Thanksgiving for the present and hope for the future does not relieve us of the memory of the past. We remember the atrocities of the Armenian Genocide and the lessons they teach, and we ask the Turkish government to do the same. Now, of course, children are not guilty for the sins of the parents, but honest recognition of the past can prevent us from repeating those sins. We take particular note of the recent injuries done by their proxies against the people of Nagorno-Karabakh and pray that the dark forces responsible will reflect and repent. So I thank you all.
Before our next speaker, I want to recognize that the permanent representative of Artsakh, Robert Avedissian, is here with us today. Our next speaker is also a member of the Congressional Armenian Staffers Association. Please welcome Peter Chalabian to the stage.
Good evening, honorable representatives, colleagues, and members of the community. My name is Peter Chalabian, and I am a newer staffer here on Capitol Hill and a member of the Congressional Armenian Staffers Association. It's an honor to be able to address this community this evening, not only as a staffer, but also as a proud Armenian American. Though I come from the great state of California, like most Armenians, the roots of my family tree extend across the globe from Burin to Beirut, Lebanon. We stand in these halls of Congress as advocates, elected officials, and staff, all in service to the public. Armenian Americans must fulfill each of these roles. Now more than ever, in the wake of the tragedies that unfolded in Artsakh, we must take an active role in defending the rights of Armenians across the world. The Armenian American story is one of survival, perseverance, and determination. Our ancestors escaped the nightmare of one genocide to find refuge in the American dream, which continues to inspire and give hope to subsequent generations of Armenian Americans like myself. That is what I channel into my work as a public servant. It is why I am motivated to help create change for the better. Every new generation of Armenian American can honor the legacy of our survivor grandparents, great-grandparents, and ancestors by finding success in our adopted country. No matter our field of study or profession, to harness that power to stand against injustice when faced with it, as well as uplift underrepresented communities so that we and others do not face what our ancestors faced. Thank you for gathering in the power center of our nation in solemn commemoration of the lives lost during one of the first genocides of the 20th century. And in commitment towards preventing history from repeating itself, your presence gives those of us who work within these walls the strength to stay and fight. Your civic engagement in ensuring that our country lives up to the most lofty of its ideals. Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening.
So impressive. Our young staff members are so grateful to have you here and doing this work. Let's hear it for them again. Thank you all also for being here tonight, and I know folks are here from around the country doing advocacy work, so give yourselves a round of applause. First, we're going to hear from our sponsor organizations. We're going to hear from the Armenian Assembly of America first. Lorig Charkoudian is the co-chair-elect of the Armenian Assembly of America.
Good evening. My first job, I think I can put a checklist on because we just got a new Armenian caucus member. Thank you for continuing to remain with us. I won't abuse your patience, but I do want to take a few minutes to, first of all, thank everyone for being here. Thank the members. Thank the youngsters who are and continue to be advocating for the Armenian community across our great nation. In 2015, in commemorating the 100-year anniversary, I'm from Los Angeles, so I stood on Wilshire Boulevard facing 166,000 people. And I gave a speech that to this day I remember, to this day random people come up to me and say that they heard it. And as I was standing there, I was sure that the dark moments in our history, like we heard from another member today, was well in our past. As I stood there in 2015, I could not possibly imagine that a few years later, 5 years later, history would actually repeat itself. That our people will once again be victims of genocide, be exiled from their homes, just like they were in 1915. And that we will be standing here today talking about not one genocide, but two genocides. It is with a heavy heart that I acknowledge this brutal reality that we're in. But what do we do about it? There are two things that we need to do. One, we need to stop putting weapons in the hands of the brutal leadership of Azerbaijan. 907 waiver needs to stop. help the aggrieved. We need to help Armenia. We need to help the 150,000 genocide survivors so that they can continue to survive, so that they can return safely and soundly to the homeland where they have lived for over 600 years. That's the next thing we have to do. How do we do that? As an Armenian people, you've heard, we have a loud voice, we are passionate, we are hard workers, but we absolutely cannot do that alone. That's why we're here today. One, to thank our friends who have helped, and second, to ask you to do more to help Armenia, to help Artsakh, to help the genocide survivors find their way back home, to help the Armenian population continue to live safely in Armenia. As you know, that safety is not a foregone conclusion. That safety is very much under threat of invasion. I hope I'm wrong, but history does have a way of repeating itself. I will end with this. For evil to prevail, it is only necessary for good people to do nothing. Please don't do nothing. Thank you very much.
And finally, we're going to hear from Aram Hamparian, who is the Executive Director of the Armenian National Committee of America.
What is left to say after a very long day? Thank you, Tali, very powerful remarks. There's little that I can add to what has already been said, but I'll just cut right to the chase. When we talk to the White House, whether it's this White House or the previous White House, we're asked, what can we do? What can we do, to help the Armenians? What can we do to stop the Aussies? Well, how about this? Stop arming Azerbaijan. Stop sending them weapons. Stop materially aiding them. Stop morally emboldening them. Stop both siding a one-sided genocide, which has been the policy of President Trump and President Biden. This is a genocide. You can draw a straight line from 1915 straight through 2024. It's a continuation of genocide. There's been this talk, you may have heard it, that it's a land for peace deal, that if the Armenians simply cede the land that Azerbaijan and Turkey claim, right, then they will grant us peace. Has anyone, if you crack a history book, you know that's not the case. Over the last 1,000 years, certainly over the last 2 centuries, it has been a one-way loss of lives and land. And at every turn, we're told that if only the Turks get that next thing, right? It was Nakhichevan after the First World War. Before that, all of Western Armenia, Kars, Ardahan, where my family's from, Dikdanagar, Sebastian, all now in Turkish hands. Does that bring peace in any regard? Are we any more peaceful? Are the Turks any less hungry? Any less bloodthirsty? No. So after all of Western Armenia, after Nakhichevan, and now Artsakh, right? Is that not enough? No, it is not enough. They're just coming for more and more and more, and our government, sadly, is not doing enough to stop it. We need to hold Azerbaijan accountable. That starts, as Talia said, with stopping the military aid, with investigating war crimes, with supporting the refugees, and ultimately leading the way for the safe, sustainable return of Armenians to Artsakh. That is the test of the West. It's not a dollar in an appropriation bill. It is U.S. leadership at the UN for a mandate that allows the safe, sustainable return of Armenians to Artsakh. The alternative is we pursue this fiction of land for peace, which just is less land, less peace, ultimately no land, no peace. That's where this is heading, and that's simply unsustainable. You've heard a lot today about legislation. Congresswoman Titus announced that she's going to introduce legislation on Magnitsky sanctions against Azerbaijani war criminals. I think there's more than 36 criminals that she's looking at.
who need to be held accountable, so there's the tightest measure. Congressman Lawler has done the counterpart to Senator Peters' bill in the House side, that needs to pass, and Senator Markey, who was here, talked about SRES 540, which is a privileged motion in the U.S. Senate, which he can bring to the Senate floor and force a vote, an up or down vote, on holding Azerbaijan accountable, forcing the administration to report on Azerbaijan's violations of Armenian rights, Armenian sovereignty, of Artsakh's very survival. So there's a lot of legislation out there. It all needs your support, and you will no doubt hear from all of us about how you can be helpful. If you're in this room, you need no convincing. If you're in this room, you are among our dearest brothers and sisters, so I don't need to convince you of anything. I will end with one thought, though, which is a note of appreciation to Lorig. Represents the very best of our Armenian and American traditions, our Armenian democratic and our American democratic traditions. Public service, sacrifice, truly a role model. When she's spoken to our interns, I have always been inspired. I've been inspired, they've been inspired, and I'll close with this. Today she is our host. Tomorrow she will be our guest when she is elected to either the House or the Senate, the choice is yours, representing Maryland in the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate. With our support. She has carried the baton for many years before her, Congresswoman Spear. We look forward to that baton being handed off to Lorig in short order. So thank you, Lorig.
That's sort of an introduction. I guess now it's my job to let everyone go. But first I do want to just say that we want to thank you for being here, and for those of you who were here all day today, raise your hand if you were here all day today doing advocacy work from across the country. Amazing. And I can tell you as an elected representative how crucial it is that your representatives are hearing from you, that they're seeing that you're present here in this room when they're telling you what they're doing and they're making commitments, and really grateful for all of this advocacy. It was an honor to be your host this evening, and thank you for being here.